Reading through the Revelation, we have first looked at the introduction, which we find in chapter 1. In chapter 2 and chapter 3, they have the 7 messages to the 7 churches of Asia. And each one of them had a message that can be applied to our lives as well. But now we come to chapter 4 and chapter 5. Today we'll look at chapter 4. Chapter 4 and chapter 5, the scene, the scenario is the heavenly scene. We go from the problems and the battles of earth to the heavenly vision of God on the throne and the worship that is due him, and how that all compares to Roman emperors and the persecution of the day. You might have seen the movie, or maybe you have read the books by C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, C.S. Lewis was a Christian, and his writings often have symbolism in them. The lion, the witch, and the wardrobe. The lion represents Jesus. He is strong but caring. And so that kind of symbolism goes throughout the whole book of Revelation. And as we look at chapter 4 today, we will see a lot of symbols and beasts and so forth. We will decipher the symbolism and kind of bring a relation to what it might mean in our reading. Chapter 4 in the New Living Translation. If you have another version, feel free to follow along. It will be very similar. Here we have the scene room, the worship of God in heaven. Then as I looked, I saw doors standing open in heaven, and the same voice I had heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. The voice said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this." And in my scriptures, this verse is a red letter verse, which means Jesus is most likely speaking this to John the Revelator, saying, "Come up to heaven, I want to show you a heavenly scene." Verse 2, "And instantly I was in the Spirit." And you noticed in the beginning of the Revelation, John was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. Here he says again, he was in the Spirit. It was a vision that he was having, and he was the onlooker to all these things that we read about in the Revelation. "And I saw the throne in heaven and someone sitting on it." Of course, God is on the throne, and it speaks of God reigning and ruling in the affairs of men. Verse 3, "The one sitting on the throne was as brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian." And the glory and the majesty of God's throne must have been awesome for the eyes of John. "And the glow of an emerald encircled his throne like a rainbow." The word rainbow could be translated halo. Whether it's a rainbow or a halo, it's the majesty around the throne of God as he rules and reigns in the affairs of men. Verse 4, 24 thrones surrounded him. These 24, we don't know exactly who they are, but we know what they are doing. They're there to worship and honor God. Some have suggested it's 12 patriarchs from the Old Testament and 12 apostles from the New Testament. And that could be symbolic of the Old and New Testaments, all pointing to God as he reigns in the affairs of mankind. Some people think it might mean just 24 angels. As we continue here, these 24 thrones surrounded him, and the 24 elders sat on them, and they were all clothed in white, which speaks of purity, and had gold crowns on their heads. It's the holiness and glory of God that is being pictured here in symbolism. It's God's throne, the awesomeness of the throne, I'm sure John was in awe in what he was seeing with his very own eyes. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder, and in front of the throne were 7 torches with burning flames. This is the sevenfold Spirit of God. Now, we have already come across several times this sevenfold Spirit of God. I think it's a reference to Isaiah, the prophet, in chapter 11, verse 2. Let me read that to you in Isaiah 11:2. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. So we have 7 characteristics of this Spirit, the sevenfold Spirit of God. The Spirit is of the Lord. It's the Lord's Spirit. It's wisdom. It's understanding. It's counsel. It's might. And it's knowledge. And it's fear of the Lord, or reverence for the Lord. So we believe that's the sevenfold Spirit of God, basically talking about God's Spirit in the affairs of mankind. So let's go back to verse 6 of Revelation chapter 4. Verse 6, in front of the throne was a shiny sea of glass, sparkling like crystal. Now remember, John is on the Isle of Patmos, a small island with sea all around him. I can picture him looking up toward the vision that he has encountered in the revealing nature of heaven in all its glory and majesty. And then picture below the foundation of the sea as calm as glass, not a wave, peace, serenity. So John sees this picture of the throne room of God as he rules and reigns in the affairs of mankind, and this calmness, this serenity that also surrounds the throne. The majesty of God, the awesomeness of God, the purity of those who worship him in holiness and in truth, and the calmness, the serenity, the peacefulness of those who put God on the throne room of their heart. In the center and around the throne were 4 living beings, each covered with eyes front and back. The first of these living beings was like a lion. The lion was one of the most noble creatures of the animal kingdom. We might say the lion is the king of the beast. And so here, most likely picturing nobility and kingliness. And then it says, there was like an ox. The ox, of course, speaks of strength and power. And the third had a human face. Humanity, the wisest of the animal kingdom, so to speak, I suppose. And the fourth was like an eagle, which is swift in flight. So here we have nobility, strength, wisdom, and swiftness, all pictured around the throne room of God. Some have put these in connection with the 4 Gospels, Matthew being the lion, it's kingly in nature. Mark, the servant, like an ox, serving with its great power to plow up the fields of life. Luke, picturing Jesus as the Son of Man. John, the Gospel of John, divinity and deity, the grace and magnitude of an eagle, the divine Son of God. Well, whatever this is, in this verse 7, we see the lion, the ox, the humanity, the eagle. It says in verse 8, each of these living beings had 6 wings, and their wings were covered all over with eyes. We noticed in verse 6 the eyes, and here we see it again in verse 8, the eyes. It's talking about watchfulness, perception all around. You know, like we often say, Mom has eyes in the back of her head. She can see everything we're doing. So it is here, the watchfulness, the perception of this holy being. And what is this being's job? Worship at the throne of God. Worship day and night the God of the universe. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God the Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come. So we have this beautiful scene of worship at the throne room of God in the heavenlies. And these beasts and these elders all around the throne in its awesomeness, in its glory, in its holiness. And all they're doing is worshiping God. Worship is the key job of heaven. Worship of the Creator, of the sovereign God, of the Lord and God. In verse 9, whenever the living beings give glory and honor and thanks to the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, speaking of God, God is on the throne. They are around the throne giving worship, their job of worship to the Creator. The 24 elders fall down and worship the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever. And they lay their crowns before the throne and say, what does it mean they lay their crowns before? Sometimes we hear that in songs or hymns that we might sing. I lay my crown before you, King Jesus. Well, crown is significant of the gifts that we are given. We are all given some kind of gifts, talents, abilities, and we want to give that back to God in worship. I sometimes have heard of singers or instrumentalists who are so good at their job and they become Christ followers. And so they want to play Christian music now. They want to sing Christian songs now. They want to lay their crowns at the foot of God and give their gifts back to Him in worship and praise. And so that's symbolic here, that these heavenly creatures, these people or these folks that are around the throne of God are giving God everything they have, all their abilities, all their gifts, go to worship Him and magnify Him. And what do they say? You are worthy, O Lord our God. You are worthy of our worship. You are worthy of our praise. It is God who has given us our very breath. It is Him who has given us our very life. He deserves our worship and praise. He is worthy of our worship and honor and thanks and praise. Notice what it says here. O Lord our God. Remember the Emperor Domitian, who was ruling at the time of this vision? He wanted the people in his temples that were built to worship the Roman emperor. He wanted them to call him Lord and God. What is John portraying in this vision? What is Jesus laying out for us in this revelation? What he is basically saying in chapter 4 and chapter 5 is that there is only one true Lord, there is only one true God that deserves your worship. All others are counterfeits. Roman emperors cannot compare to the Creator God. There is only one God, one Lord, who deserves your praise. So they laid their crowns before the throne and say, You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased. The closing of chapter 4 is basically reminding us, so there is no compromise. There is one God, there is one Lord. He is the Creator. And he is worthy of our praise and our thanks and our honor. It will go to no other. It will be shared with no other. He is Lord and God. There is no compromise. Well, thank you for listening today in chapter 4 of the Revelation. Next week, we'll pick up chapter 5, which is continuing this scene in heaven of God's throne and the Lion and the Lamb. God bless you and God keep you.